It's all right. Don't worry.
Yes. Good.
Plus, you can do like 30 minutes of bloopers then or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Comedy Guy. Holy shit. We just did 30 minutes of this podcast before I realized that I hadn't pressed record. Yeah. Oh, God. No. So we are going to go through the first... We're going to get through... This is a hit. So... let me help myself again. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Comedy Guy. This episode is a little bit different. We're here just to talk about stuff that I find interesting. And I was recently learning about how companies get into the Soviet Union. Like, not just like after the fall of the Soviet Union, but like improper in 1990 before it fell. McDonald's, the symbol of capitalism, actually opened a store in the Soviet Union.
On Red Square.
On Red Square. It was a huge thing, a huge symbol of the openness of the USSR. And going through that story, it's a fascinating story. And I got onto this story because I've been researching how Sega with consoles, they had made a version of their Master System specifically for the Soviet Union. It worked with Soviet Union TVs, and it was a whole redesign. It wasn't just reshelled. It was a whole redesign to work in the Soviet Union. And as I was researching that, the question arises, like, why the fuck were you in the Soviet Union?
True, yeah.
We look back on perestroika era and we think that was a fucking dumpster fire of an economy. Shit was going downhill real fast. Why would you think that's a good idea? But in 1990, things were different. There was optimism. The winds of change were blowing. And through what I started to read, there's Pepsi and McDonald's. Yeah. And Pepsi had already been in the Soviet Union since 1972. We're going to talk about that. And then McDonald's finally gets its chance in 1990. And how these companies managed to, goddamn, an amazing effort of setting up in the Soviet Union. Now, to do that with me, I have this gentleman next to me, Tauri Einberg. Hi, Tauri.
Hey, Lewis.
Hey, again. We did it. We already recorded this episode, and then 30 minutes in, I realized that we had not pressed record.
It's all right. You can talk about the same topic again. You get a vibe of what it feels to be a teacher. So don't worry about it.
Because you're a history major. You got a degree in history.
I got a bachelor's in history, and I'm currently in the process of getting one to be a history teacher in high school. All
right, I'll repeat the same joke that I did the first time, which is you're a history major, which means you've got no job, so you can, in the middle of the day, you can come and record podcasts with me.
Exactly. Even if you don't press record, I still have time to go again.
So I've been looking into this. I wanted to talk about McDonald's, but I think we kind of need to back up and start with Pepsi. Yeah. Because when I talk to friends about this, and admittedly all my friends are like 30 or under or something, like not old people in Estonia. And I'm also aware that I'm talking mostly to people in Estonia. So if there's some part of history that's completely obvious to you, I'm sorry, I'm dumb Westerner. That Pepsi had been in the Soviet Union since 1972. Yeah. You could actually buy a Pepsi in the Soviet Union in 1972.
Yeah, if you were lucky. Like,
okay, true.
You got to understand, like, it was still like a deficit good, definitely. Like, even if it was produced in large quantities, people would buy that shit immediately if they could.
I wonder if because I know that by the 80s, it was something like 1 billion bottles of Pepsi were being sold in the Soviet Union a year. I wonder if by that late 80s time, was it any easier, do you think? Was it any?
Probably not, because like usually the production lines were still like, the distribution was still fucked. Could have been anyway. Like shipments could go missing. Like you could have, because like the store clerks would hold a lot of power as well, and they could just not stock the shelves with that stuff. Yeah. They could just keep it to themselves, sell it in a back alley somewhere, whatever the fuck. It was like on every level of production, you have corruption and a lot of it. So you never really know where the stuff is going missing. It's just somewhere.
So the story of Pepsi starts as my notes. Wait, we'll go back to my notes.
Was it starts 59?
59 at the Moscow Fair.
Yeah.
International, it's like an international conference mess exhibition.
A mess is a good, I think like a good thing that's nowadays done. So basically a good example of Cold War era, like opposition permeating every aspect of society. Culture as well. Like it wasn't only fought on a political stage, but it's also like who has a better society, right? Which system works better? So that was the whole idea, right?
So the Americans could come, and wasn't it something about a kitchen?
The kitchen debate was the famous thing
between Nixon and Khrushchev.
Nixon and Khrushchev, yeah.
Trying to show who had the best kitchen or the most
pretty much
efficient
the
kitchen.
most efficient kitchen, who had the best kitchen appliances, all that stuff.
Such a weird flex to think of today.
It is, yeah, right. But could you imagine like a country showing up? It's like American refrigerator or something to show off. Or like Japanese government showing off the new PS5. Like, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Look how great Japanese society is.
Yeah.
So what happened? So the reason this all happens is a gentleman whose name is Donald Kendall, and he was the man who got Pepsi into the Soviet Union. And the way it goes down is that Donald Kendall happens to know Tricky Dicky, happens to know Richard Nixon, who is the president of the United States.
Not back then. Back then he was, I think, was he the VP?
Oh, wait, was he? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was the VP.
59, he was definitely not the president. Yeah.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, he wasn't president yet.
Wasn't president,
Loses to Kennedy, but eventually gets in later, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So Nixon's going over there. He's a friend of Nixon. Kendall calls up Nixon the night before and goes, "Yo, you gotta bring that Ruski motherfucker and get some Pepsi in his hand." And Nixon says, "No problems, I'm on it."
Shows the fucking importance of acquaintances.
Yeah, I'm on it. And that's it. You know what? That's interesting because it's stressed time and time again, the importance of acquaintances when working in the Soviet Union.
Definitely, yeah.
But
also in the US.
Our story starts with the US, right?
True,
A guy knew this, up and coming presidential candidate at that stage as well.
Because I think the first hurdles actually, like, they were more on the US side than on the Soviet side. Because he had so many contacts in the Union.
Oh, okay. Get it. Well, there was that anti-sentiment because the reason that Pepsi was so prominent in this 1959 Moscow fair is because Coca-Cola didn't want to come.
Yeah.
They were like, we're not coming.
They dropped out, yeah.
Yeah. So then Pepsi's like, we'll take that shit. We'll do it. So, so Nixon leads Khrushchev over to the Pepsi exhibit.
Yeah.
And he's very clever. This is where he's very clever, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Because he gives Khrushchev two samples. One is like, it's both the same Pepsi syrup, but one is mixed with water from the Soviet Union, and one is mixed with like water from the US. And of course, Khrushchev appreciates or loves the one that's made with the USSR water, because USSR water is the best, I guess. Like he really ecstatic about it, right? Passes it to all the people around him, really loves it. So,
and the thing that wasn't said is that it was the same syrup.
Yeah.
Both of them were made from the same syrup. So it is true that he had managed to get this Pepsi made in the Soviet Union with Soviet water, but it was the same syrup imported in because there's no way Pepsi were giving that to the communists.
God,
no chance. And I think in the end they never did.
No, they never did. No,
never did. In the end, it was always the syrup was always imported.
Yeah.
So, but the clever thing was, how could Khrushchev possibly like or be seen to like this Western product? Oh, it's the USSR version.
Plus, it's a great way to show, this can also be produced in the USSR really easily. We only need the water. We can import the syrup. Easy to make. Could be sold even in your country if you so desire.
Well, sure. That would be something for the bureaucracy, not a public message. The public message is this is Soviet Union.
Yeah, true, of course. But I mean, like Khrushchev could probably, you could probably see the gears in his head turning. Like, I could make this stuff in Russia as well.
Sure.
If I wanted to.
That it's essentially just combining syrup with fizzy water and then getting that. There's not a huge supply chain. There is, but not. See, that's where we're going to come to later. McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's crazy.
That's crazy, yeah.
So many times larger to get all the burgers and the fries and the food.
You literally have to set up a whole production line like from the get-go.
So it wasn't that hard to bottle Pepsi. And there's a whole bunch of like little stories around there, like that Khrushchev loved, before they even got it into the Soviet Union, Khrushchev loved Pepsi so much after this encounter that he talked to diplomatically through back channels, talked to the Americans talked to Pepsi. Pepsi in Austria developed and bottled a completely clear, it's called white Pepsi. You can Google it, white Pepsi. And a completely clear, nondescript bottle just has a red star on the cap, and they were exported into the Soviet Union specifically for Khrushchev because he loved it. He wanted to drink it, like just for his own personal stash. It's a crazy story.
Fucking shows you how much power dictators have. Get whatever I want.
He wasn't a dictator. Yes, he was.
Well,
yeah, he was.
General Secretary.
So why we need to also talk about the story of Pepsi Cola in the USSR is because we need to talk about how when an international company works in a country, they need to get their profits out.
Yeah.
If I'm Australian Louis Zezeran, I've come to Estonia to make my fortune by pimping out comedians and taking high margins off the cost of their ticket sales and events. Now, let's say I am now millionaire Louis Zezeran. I have earned millions of euros in the country of Estonia. We've got people like Daniel Weinberg sleeping on couches, eating kebabs, but I am a millionaire and I wish to take my profits home.
Yeah.
Now, I can do that
easily
because it's quite straightforward to convert a euro into an Australian dollar.
Yeah.
They are convertible currencies.
Exactly. Whereas the currency in the Soviet Union at the time was, like the Soviet ruble, which was worthless on the international stage. The currency by the Soviet Union was like super controlled by the government. It was actually not meant to be exchangeable.
By design, yeah.
By design. It was designed to be. So how is Pepsi? So Pepsi has this dilemma, right? I'm going to sell this product. All my profits are going to be in rubles. Can't take that money out.
Sure. I've got buckets of rubles. I've got all these rubles.
I made a ton of money that's absolutely worthless, basically.
Yeah, it can't convert into something that we can use.
Yeah. So they were given a deal by the Soviets to sell Stolichная vodka in
a trade. So it's a barter.
It's a
so
barter.
It's not actually currency being...
It's an international barter trade.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool, actually. So they had the rights to sell vodka in the US. And they would sell it as like this original Soviet vodka made in Leningrad, so for like $8 a bottle or something, which back then, taking into consideration dollar was a much stronger currency, was like horrendously expensive, I would imagine. And but I mean, hey, it worked. Like they made a ton of money off it because they were worried about the price at first, but I think it's like they marketed it as being super exclusive, Russian made. Everyone was interested. It's like, oh, vodka straight from behind the Iron Curtain.
But no, very mysterious things to us in the West. It was like, whoa, who knows what's happening?
Exactly, right.
Who knows what's happening behind there? Oh, this is the real thing. And there were some tariffs to bring that in. And yeah, they tried to get down the tariffs. But in the end, the Americans didn't care.
They didn't care, no.
And that's going to be the same thing we're going to see with McDonald's when there's the concern that, oh shit, how much does this Big Mac cost versus how much is someone getting paid?
Yeah.
In the end, people didn't care.
In the end, there was probably nothing to buy for the money anyway.
Yeah, so they were, fuck it, we may as well spend it on Big Macs.
It's probably a better investment.
So Stolinica, the Russians start giving them Stolinica.
Yeah.
They trade it for Pepsi.
Yeah.
And Stolinica goes great, like in America. Yeah. And it goes really great until after about 79, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. Then anti-Soviet sentiment in America was suddenly very big.
Yeah.
They weren't so popular. The Ruskies weren't as popular anymore.
They were the evil communist villains again.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden we've got the writers of Top Gun going, yes, yes, Iceman, you can be my wing. Yes, this is right. This is where this kind of culture, this pop culture is born. And so Pepsi were like, yo, we're not selling any Stolinica before. Yeah. It's kind of your fault too that we're not selling any Stolinica.
Yeah.
You're going to need to pay us.
Plus they had like I think they upped their production and done a lot of other things as well. Plus the Soviet Union was way more broken, like economically speaking.
Yeah.
So how are you going to pay us back?
So there's one very famous story where Soviet Union couldn't pay the Pepsi bill.
Yeah.
And so what they did is that they gave Pepsi Corporation 17 Navy ships.
Yeah.
So 17 Navy ships. And we're talking a couple of submarines, I
think it was like a cruiser there.
Cruiser. Now, none of these ships were good. Yeah. They were barely afloat. Only one of them ran under its own power. They were destined to be scrapped. And the idea is that Pepsi took them and then on-sold them to scrapyards to make their money.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't again like, so it wasn't like Pepsi sailed out of St. Petersburg Harbor with the new Pepsi fleet. And it wasn't like this Donald Kendall standing on the bridge of his new SS Pepsi, sort of, you know, triumphantly about to go take on Coca-Cola bottling plants and invade small countries for their water supply or something.
For their carbonated water.
For their carbonated, hand over the sugar water. It was an on paper transaction to help to hopefully satisfy the laws and ideological requirements of the Soviet Union. So yeah, at one stage Pepsi was the 7th biggest navy in the world for a moment on paper.
And I think they did say like, we're more effective at disarming the Soviet Union than anyone else has been. So
that was Donald Kendall who said that line. Yes, we are more effective at disarming the Soviet Union than you are. It's so funny, that story.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to tell with the story of Pepsi is that great bureaucracy, obviously, the difficulties in converting the currency. A company wants to make money. How do you get the money out of the Soviet Union? And how Pepsi dealt with that.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a ongoing struggle, how to find this over time.
They offered the Soviet Union they offered them an excellent deal, to be fair. That's like an offer they couldn't refuse. Because with the alcohol, the other thing was that the Soviet Union had a huge alcohol problem, but at the same time they made a lot of money off it. So like, how do you do an anti-alcohol campaign without destroying your own budget? Hey, let's sell the vodka to Americans. Import Pepsi. We can use that Pepsi to make people happier because they're like, hey, we are like more strict on vodka, but here you go. There's this new fizzy drink from the West that we're giving you as compensation, so to speak, to keep public opinion high. So it was an excellent deal for them.
Yeah, the way that all of this stuff is written, though, I don't know if this is correct. You get the idea from reading all this stuff that it was the Soviet Union who really wanted this.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, give us the motherfucking Pepsi, all right, and no one gets hurt. Like, that's the feeling.
They were offered a pretty much perfect deal as well, so that was probably the thing, right?
Okay.
It was so beneficial for them in like multitudes of ways,
So we're here also, if you're watching the video, we're drinking our Western capitalistic drinks.
Yeah, I got a Pepsi at the store. I fortunately couldn't find it in a glass bottle, but what are you going to do?
Oh, we didn't tell the bottle story about Pepsi.
Oh, yeah. That the that the Soviets couldn't actually sell Pepsi in a Pepsi glass bottle because they were so afraid that the Soviet public, because they weren't used to getting anything from the West, they would just keep all the glass bottles. Like, be like, you invite your friends over and be like, hey, this is my Pepsi bottle, So I have a fucking collection, man. I got a whole shelf of these things. Like, wow. So they had to sell them in like Russian kvass, or like the Russian glass bottles, basically. And people they were encouraged to keep the label of the Pepsi as like a souvenir or as a sign of the West, and recycle the bottle, because the Soviet Union needed to recycle the bottles, not because the Soviet Union was this great environmentally friendly country, not really.
I don't think anyone was thinking that.
Well, probably not. You just have to look at the Aral Sea and then be like, oh, and but the problem was like Soviet Union would just run out of glass bottles. Basically, they just needed to recycle them because their industry in pretty much every regard was shit.
All right, so that's our brief introduction as to where Pepsi comes in. So now Pepsi, one of the advantages that Pepsi had is that the love of Khrushchev, which now that did stall a bit when Brezhnev came to power. Nixon also had his time, and then he leaves as well, obviously, afterwards. So there's some slowdown, but Pepsi managed to get themselves in.
Yeah, because they knew all that. Pretty much they knew the higher-ups in the Soviet Union. They never had to go for the bureaucratic structure or the mess, so to speak.
Which is where McDonald's enters.
Yep.
Because McDonald's, at the start at least, have no such connections.
No,
in the
nothing.
Soviet
It's
Union.
pretty much like one man's passion project. Cohen was he called?
George
right?
Cohen. Yeah, George Cohen. So the story of... So McDonald's understands these. So we're going back already to 1976. And the way it works is George Cohen, so the Olympics in Canada.
Yeah.
And this is coming, and it was actually McDonald's Canada, technically, who was going into the Soviet Union, not McDonald's America.
Yeah, go.
So in Canada. So George Cohen is head of McDonald's Canada. The Canadian Olympic delegation say, hey, we need buses. We need to borrow some buses. We've got all these
luxury coaches.
Luxury coaches. McDonald's has a whole fleet of coaches for your stuff. Can we borrow some of your coaches? And he's like, nah, I don't know. Eventually he goes, fine, borrow the stupid buses. Okay.
Yeah.
Cohen's watching the Olympic Games with his family when suddenly across the stadium, over the other side in the car park, he sees his buses.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, they're my buses, the McDonald's buses. Here they come. No word on whether they had the golden arches on the side.
Yeah.
One would assume not.
Yeah.
Because out of those buses stepped the Soviet delegation.
delegation.
So you would imagine they probably didn't have the McDonald's logo on the side. You know what I mean?
I'm loving it.
Yeah, exactly. Would dear leaders be getting into the McDonald's bus in Canada?
That would just be such a ironic scene.
Yes, here's your transport. What is M? Right? So Cohen spots, he goes there, they're my buses. That's interesting. He then sees the Soviets and he's going, ding, I need to talk to the Soviets. This guy knows about Pepsi. He knows what's up with Pepsi and the story of Pepsi by this stage. So this is 76. Pepsi's already been selling in the Soviet Union for 4 years. He's like, the gears start ticking in his head. He runs over. He's like, yo. He comes to his family. He's like, let's go meet the Russians. They go over. He kind of just barges in. It's 1976. There's no security.
Yeah.
There's no fucking, you can go anywhere you want in 1976. You could smoke in front of children and, drive your car with no seatbelt and no one's telling you what to do.
The good times.
They were. Barges over, introduces himself, said, hello, here I am. I'm from McDonald's in Canada and lovely to meet all of you. And then now this is it, that
I think the local, I guess the local Canadian guy who was taking care of them. So
the diplomat,
speak.
the
diplomat
guy, yeah.
Yeah. It was like if you want to talk with the Soviet delegation, it has to go through the correct channels. You can't just barge up and talk to these people.
Right. And then Cohen famously replies, my friend, protocol is, I own this bus.
There's so many great lines from these.
So gangster. And the Soviet delegates loved it.
They loved it because, the Soviets themselves, they knew, they were well aware what, tight bureaucracy meant, or, constraining bureaucracy. And the fact that he told the bureaucrat to just basically fuck off, they loved it.
Yeah.
They were all over him because they had respect for the man. He was
so they liked him. So he's like, hey, why don't we go check out one of them McDonald's restaurants?
Yeah, I think they invited him for dinner, but he was like, hey, let's have lunch at McDonald's first. Smart
nice, which is a trick you would probably try and pull with a girl, but he pulled it with the Soviets. That's you'd be like, oh, dinner? Oh, why don't we just hang out in the afternoon? There's more, and he pulled that old trick, but he did it with the Soviets instead. So the Soviets, they love the McDonald's, the service, they're blown away by it.
Which goes to say something about Soviet service, to be fair. If you're amazed by McDonald's, which is what I thought was they were super impressed. Oh my God, this is friendly service, excellent food. Nowadays, McDonald's is shit you eat at 2 a.m. when you're fucked up.
Right. That idea of that.
This is the pinnacle of quality, so to speak.
Yeah. I think we forget that McDonald's really, they invented and revolutionized the quick and systematic service of food. They really invented all of that.
Yeah.
Because we've got stories here that we're going to come up to that. Because nothing really happens after that. They met. It's delightful. It's not like he didn't meet Grand Leader.
No. He just met some diplomats, basically.
Some diplomats. So but he hasn't just met the highest ranking. It's not like they can necessarily push something through.
And I think they did say we'll pass this higher up, but that doesn't really mean anything. But I did like the fact that he, I think, had a lot more initial support from McDonald's, because I think he called his superior, and his superior was go for it.
Yeah, he called McDonald's in America, and they went, go for it. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Finger licking good. Go for it. So this is all. So that's the reason why it's technically McDonald's Canada. going into the Soviet Union. Now, it wasn't some grand scheme to circumvent. I mean, they're aware. They know what Canada is. It's not like they're like, no, it's not America. We're not capitalistic. We know.
Yeah.
But
it was easier to sell them.
It did help a bit.
Yeah.
It still helps a little.
It's not the, the arch nemesis or the
it's
devil
like
itself.
the light version. Of
basically.
The light version of the devil. So the next time, McDonald's then are hunting for another way in. Then they spot the. Then we're looking at the fast forward then to 1980, the Moscow Olympics.
Yeah.
And McDonald's are like, hey, you got a lot of people to feed. We're real good at feeding a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which I think again says something about the. These days, it's almost that systematized and quick way of making fast food. It's almost like, well, everyone knows it now.
Yeah.
Any one of these Hesburger, some fucking Finnish fucks, they learn how to make a hamburger quickly as well. Anyone now knows the techniques that McDonald's use are now common knowledge.
Yeah.
But even in 1980, it was like, we need to make food quickly. Call in whoever in the world knows how to make food quickly.
Yeah. And they call McDonald's.
McDonald's, right. And it was still easier. Like, again, I'm trying to get my head around that it's like there's Moscow, there's the Olympics.
Yeah.
We need this thing catered. That it was still better. They would have had to bring all the shit with them. Do so much backup work, get the supply lines in, train the staff, logistics. That was all easier than just learning how to make Soviet burger faster themselves.
Of course, yeah.
It was still easier. They had no infrastructure at all.
No,
Either
nothing.
they invent it from scratch or they bring in the Americans who at least they got to pay for it, but at least they already know how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he tries. At this stage they've spent a lot of money trying to get that.
Yeah, because this is 1980. He's been going for like years to the Soviet Union, and there were like several. I think there's some pretty good like stories of how he slowly learned how to deal with the Soviet bureaucracy and the people, and like I think he said like he would take these $12 or $13 McDonald's watches and like pass them to people if he needed to get through a situation quickly.
That's crazy.
There was like he went to a hotel and they said, "Oh, we don't have any spare rooms. I'm sorry." And then he gave the guy a McDonald's watch, and he's like, "Oh, we have a suite available for you."
That's like, as a Westerner, that's a classic story of Soviet Union.
It is. Yeah.
There's nothing.
Or like when a bureaucrat said, "Oh, I'm so happy to help you," and he would write make a form where he says like, "Oh yes, this person will help you," but he would sign not like to the bottom right, but to the bottom left. That's actually code message, as in like, "Don't do anything I say," like do the exact opposite. That's crazy. And but he slowly learned all these techniques.
The drinking here as well.
Oh yeah, I bet there was some great stories about that.
Christ, that he's got to drink shots of vodka.
Always, yeah.
Always.
Yeah, because every meeting they would like celebrate with vodka afterwards, and he's probably, oh my God, I couldn't imagine like going through that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even take it today.
No.
2021, there's still, like, I don't really typically like shots of alcohol.
Yeah, I mean,
and so you're in a bar, someone's like, "Hey, let's have a shot," and I'm like, no, thank you. And I'll still get people look at me like, "Holy shit, you just pissed on my grandmother's grave." Like, dare you wouldn't take this shot? Like, you're just, why? Oh my God, I can't believe this is the most disrespectful you've ever been. I'm like, no, I just don't want to. I'll drink this beer with you instead. No. So I can only imagine how intense that must have been.
Yeah, because this is like not with Estonians. This is like, Stonewall cold-faced communist bureaucrats and diplomats and party members, really, in the halls of Kremlin, or maybe not that high up, but you're still dealing with the Russians.
So much, yeah. So he's got to deal with that. He's got to deal with the bureaucracy. Now, I mean, okay, so he can bring in cigarettes.
Oh,
and the
he
McDonald's
did that as well,
cigarettes and McDonald's watches.
He basically learned like how to do the Soviet barter, like how to exchange goods for goods and services.
It's not mentioned here, but there are probably a few pairs of Levi's.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he could have been like a favorite person of theirs, because he could just bring in basically stuff that you would never have been able to get even in the Union.
There's one story that says that at one stage, Cohen takes his translator into one of these exclusive Moscow stores. And the translator lady breaks down crying because she's never seen such luxury products before
Yeah.
and can never imagine seeing such luxury products in her life.
Yeah, or like a store that's so well stocked,
Yeah.
and her family will never be able to buy any of this stuff.
So it doesn't work out.
No.
It doesn't. So the Moscow. So they don't get to cater the Moscow Olympics.
Yeah, they failed. But I think that was actually a good thing, like in retrospect, because the U.S. boycotted the Olympic Games, and it would have been pretty difficult to like have the U.S. boycott the games and then. But who's serving the food? Oh, it's McDonald's. You know, the most famous, pretty much one of the most famous American companies.
Yeah.
So they were lucky in some sense.
Because it was actually in the end, because it was one of these explained like this way that like what are they like they said we're going to sign the contract, we'll call you at 10 a.m.
Yeah, we'll call you at 10 a.m. And then they called him at 10 a.m. and we're like, yeah, we have postponed it to 2 p.m. or something, or 4 or whatever.
Not long, like not long.
But then they would call him at the arranged time and be like, yes, we've postponed it to 10 a.m. next day. Wait for the call, and it was for how long?
17 days.
Could you imagine that? 17 days, every day you're prepping for this meeting. Like you're getting dressed, putting on your suit, you know, like you're probably trying to look as good as you can because this is like an official signing, you know, with the second greatest superpower, Cold War superpower in the world. And then it's 17 days in a row. The anxiety, all this shit. Oh my God, I would have been destroyed by the end of day 17, I think.
Imagine, because they keep calling you up. Like that just
Yeah.
sounds, I mean, it sounds like a James Bond spy thriller. I mean, kind of
It is kinda, yeah.
literally was, I guess.
I could imagine like the mental strain on that shit.
Because in the end, it was at a later date, not at that time, it was later revealed that Mikhail Suslov, the
Yeah.
chief of ideology of the Politburo, personally cancelled the deal.
Yeah. Just
Okay,
said
so
no.
we can't have the capitalistic Americans feeding everybody at the Moscow Olympics. That
Yeah,
just wasn't going to go.
Yeah, they did say like, listen, this is like, you know, like a prime example of a capitalist product. It will corrupt everyone in the union. So can't let that go in.
So I don't have. So the next time is in '87, and we don't have to go too much into this. But there's another sort of, basically not like a Moscow fair, but kind of something like this
similar,
going on. Exhibition of achievements of national economy.
Yeah.
All right, real good Soviet. Exhibition of achievements of the national economy. All right, and this time actually the Soviets approached the Americans. So the Soviets actually approached McDonald's and said, "Would you cater this event for us?" And now the only reason this was allowed, because by '87 we're deep into perestroika.
Yes.
Well, no, we're into perestroika.
Into perestroika, yeah.
So things were opening up, so that was allowed to happen. The only reason that didn't happen in the end was the Americans wanted too much, or more than the Soviets wanted to pay.
Yeah.
For bringing, because they got to bring in everything, like we were saying, the supply lines, the logistics, the machines, training the people, and in the end, it was going to cost too much. But so that's in '87. Again, that deal falls through, but things are getting close.
Yeah.
By this stage, so we've got now perestroika itself. So when did Mikhail Gorbachev? When did he come to power?
I need to check the exact year, but it's like a second half of '80s. It's basically like
Okay,
the
so a bit
Gorbachev
before that, and he's coming in
Let me check
with this.
so we know we can be accurate.
Oh yeah, he's coming in with these. He knows that he needs to reform the Soviet Union. Reform, like make reforms.
Yes,
Economic.
because everyone can tell like this shit is falling apart.
Sure. And
like-
I think the reason I like talking about perestroika is it's like a word that I knew from back
Yeah,
then.
85.
85
So,
Gorbachev comes
so
in.
literally second half of the '80s.
So he's trying to implement these. I think perestroika is like something we knew in the West. Like
Yeah.
it's like one Russian word that we knew.
Perestroika and glasnost.
Glasnost.
Two
the
things,
being
yeah.
open.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're actually going to talk about the disasters or whatever happens in society, because like the general thing the Soviets did was if something went badly, they just didn't say anything about it.
Okay.
It was never discussed in the society. Like if the government fucked up, did something, they would never discuss it.
So as I understand, correct me my understanding.
Perestroika is like the economical side,
Okay,
the
right.
reforms, and
Yep.
then glasnost is more like the liberalization of media and whatnot, like making the society more open in itself.
Okay. Right, as a culture, right, because
It's
you've got
more-
this.
yeah.
You've got a deep culture of not saying nothing.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
Soviet Union.
Exactly,
All
yeah.
right. So this deal falls through
Yeah.
to get the Americans to cater the fair in 1987. But by this stage, Mikhail Gorbachev has started to pay attention.
Yeah.
And he sees what this could be. He gets it at this stage.
It's like a tangible sign. If there was a McDonald's, he could like say, you know, these reforms I'm doing are like, this is a monument to my reforms, basically. It shows me that like, geez, a McDonald's is
a monument to your reforms. But
it's
yeah.
McDonald's, yeah.
Ronald's there fucking dancing on Lenin's grave.
Exactly. Because like it's outside, you know, companies coming into the USSR and establishing their own like chains and showing that the economy actually works or does something. Because they did allow private enterprise at some point as well. Not completely, but like in a limited way. Was it like they did, because McDonald's, when they eventually did come, was like 51% had to be owned by the Russian government, or the Soviet government, and then 49% could be owned by McDonald's. Something.
Yeah, that's right. Where don't I have that? Yeah, it's, that's right. It was still fully, yes.
So that's kind of what also kind of helped them, made it easier, I guess.
Yeah, that Gorbachev wants this. He wants this symbol. So then then I guess things accelerate because he wants it.
Yeah.
And okay, now that Gorbachev wants it,
he has someone at the top, basically.
Right. So it's in it's in his best interest to not only get McDonald's in, but to help them succeed.
Yes, exactly.
And so a lot of the logistical supply lines and the red tape, he's just cutting through that, making sure that this happens because he needs this symbol to be shown.
Exactly.
So between 1987 then and there's the opening in January 1990, they start working on. Now they've got, so there's these 5 big things that were the problems for McDonald's in doing it. So the first, the big problems as it comes to how, that's great. Gorbachev wants it.
Yeah.
George Cohen wants it. Fucking Ronald McDonald's jumping up and down. He loves it. Hamburglar is going out of his mind. Loves the idea. But there's some realities.
Yeah.
And the first of the big 5 realities was the produce supply.
Yes, exactly. So agriculture in the Soviet Union, like, I'm not going to say it was fucked, but like being the Minister of Agriculture was considered a dead-end job in the Soviet bureaucracy. This was like, they were like, agriculture's fucked, can't be fixed, don't know how to fix. Put the guy in charge, he's never going to have a political career anymore. This is a dead-end job.
So we've got the collectivization of farms. There's just people working on farms for barely any money.
Pretty much, but like, it's also the fact that like on every level of production, there's rampant corruption. Shit goes missing all the time. And I'm not talking like produce. I'm talking like farm equipment. Like everything that can be stolen was stolen. It's so fucked. Like even if it was something the people would have found useless, like I don't know, like parts of a combine harvester, why would they steal it? Might need it. Might change it for something. Might barter.
Because that's the problem when you're trying to, like with the socialist system or the communist system there, like if I'm working on the farm, what inspiration do I have to work harder?
Yeah, well, pretty much nothing. You have like a central planner in Moscow who says, right, you have to make this much stuff, right? The guys make half as much, but they fill out the paperwork. Yeah, we did it. We did it, you know? No one's going to check anyway because it's just impossible, bureaucratically speaking, to check every aspect of a production level in every like production and like in pretty much like every sector of the economy. It doesn't work. It's just way too much. It's impossible to manage.
So for McDonald's to get now, they need a lot. They need a lot of McBurgers. They need a lot of McRibs,
and they need a reliable supply. Right, that was the main thing. Because even if the Soviet Union, let's say, you actually find some farms do work, they might run into some problems. You know, but if like say a tractor on the farm breaks down, no way to pretty much fix it because you don't get the parts in any way. There's production halts, you don't get enough produce, the restaurant shuts down. So a problem, right? Need a reliable supply.
Sure. Because the way McDonald's typically works would be, okay, in another country, if there's a reliable supply chain of agriculture, and in fairness to McDonald's, they do typically rely on local produce and local beef because it's fucking cheaper. That's
exactly right. You don't want to transport that stuff from Canada? It's just insane, right?
So they can't do that. So McDonald's has to essentially become more vertically integrated than
Exactly.
they've ever been before. They're going to have to do everything.
Yeah, so they actually start farms, right?
McDonald's, a McFarm. It's Ronald out there digging away.
That was amazing. Like I read up on that. It's like that they made like a factory farm basically, right?
Oh.
Where they produce everything locally.
That would be so interesting to understand from someone who might have worked there.
Yeah.
Was it different? You know, were you happy? Was there Ronald singing songs?
I have no idea. Like, because they didn't say like what was the pay rate like? You know, all the other stuff. Like, was it any different to the general Soviet system, or how was it?
Because we'll get to later on the what they had to do about training the actual staff in the McDonald's,
Yes.
and they did a very good job at that.
Yes.
But I do wonder what it was like so they had to build it. It was called the McComplex.
Yeah.
And it was 10,000 square meter state-of-the-art manufacturing complex in the Solzvedsto district of southwestern Moscow. So somewhere on the outskirts of Moscow in the southwest. Huge friggin' factory to put all this stuff together, and their own farms.
And their own
well.
processing, like to process the food as well, right? So everything.
I mean, just even a line like this, it's just take Soviet Union and me. This is the whole reason this podcast exists. Okay, this line here. 2 workers within the complex were specifically tasked with making sure the buns for McDonald's burgers came out exactly circular.
Yeah.
If they did not meet the stringent standards, the irregular buns were quickly discarded.
That's like a next level of autism. Really.
In the Soviet, now that's very typical.
I know, yeah.
Very typical for it. In the Soviet Union, 2 guys. I want to meet one of those guys, right? You're the round. Imagine trying to explain that to Ivan. Okay, Ivan, we got you a job. Oh, good, right?
Imagine that guy, like you're tossing out all the irregular buns, and then on your way home from work, you go to the shop and there's no bread anywhere.
Oh yeah, Ivan was the fucking pimp of the village.
Ivan took all the bread that was irregularly shaped and probably sold it for something.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do that? He was probably Ivan's like, no, not regular. Look, not very precise Soviet accuracy.
Listen,
I better take.
I need 5 more of these today.
Yes. So Ivan,
I have deal for what?
I'm just trying to explain that to Ivan. Like, okay, Ivan, you and your family are really poor, been toiling the ground forever. If you got bread, you've got to line up for days to get it.
Yeah.
But here's your job. Get this, Ivan.
Yeah.
You're going to see unlimited amounts of bread. And when you find a piece of perfectly white, like, so you've never seen bread that white before. Like, it glows. It's that white, Ivan. When you see a bit of that bread that's not perfectly round and perfectly white, throw it away. just throw it away, Ivan. No, we don't want that. Imagine, how'd you even explain it to that guy?
I have no idea. It had to, like, you couldn't just hire you had to hire probably someone who had access to, like, better consumer products. That would make sense. Otherwise, he would just, would fuck up the whole production line.
All of a sudden down the street, there's Mick Evans.
I used to be a politician, but now I check buns,
Yeah. He was
more money.
He's the first one just to use that burger sauce that everyone loves in Estonia. What's that sauce that everyone's... I'm like... When I first came in there, like, it's a burger. I'm like, what's on it? They're like, burger sauce. I'm like...
Give me the orange one.
What the hell? Yeah, the orange one.
Oh, yeah, the one you mix the ketchup and mayo.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck is this? They're like, it's burger sauce. I'm like, what's in it? They're like, it's burger sauce.
Burger and sauce.
So that's how... They were able to do that. What I don't have a lot of information yet, but as I understood, the end of the Soviet Union was not good for this whole operation because even though McDonald's controlled everything, like one of the farms would still be in Ukraine or something, or one of the farms was in Belarus or something.
Yeah.
So this was an issue after the Soviet Union fell, but not beforehand. So, okay. So then we've got...
That was the first problem, right?
That was the first problem. Right. Cohen's getting cozy with Gorbachev at this stage. Okay, so the money thing, the repeat again, by 1989, so the issue here is Sergey is going to walk into that McDonald's and he is going to go, Big Mac, please. And he's going to pay for that Big Mac with Soviet rubles. And McDonald's are going to be collecting all these Soviet rubles. And
And what do you know?
What do you do with them? And not only that, people
even
don't
more
have.
worthless.
They don't even have that many of them. So
Yeah.
people were earning 151 rubles a month.
Yeah.
And the price, when it opened, the price of a Big Mac value meal. Imagine. Did they actually call it the value meal? I want to know. Not just,
know.
was it called a Happy Meal?
Jesus.
In 1990 in Moscow, Pushkin Square. Yes, Happy Meal. Okay. That the cost of the Big Mac value meal was 5 rubles and 65 kopecks.
So a day's salary, basically.
Okay, was a kopek like a cent of a ruble
exactly,
or something?
yeah.
Okay, was
Yeah.
there 100 in the ruble?
No, you said, 100 in a ruble.
100 in the ruble, yeah, 100 in the
Same
ruble.
system, yeah.
So, yeah, like a day's salary.
Imagine you work for a day in a factory somewhere, and then you can buy one Big Mac value meal. What a time to be alive.
Oh my God. Now, Pepsi had already come across this issue.
Yeah.
See, again, McDonald's would know well the story of this. In fact, there is a story of the way that the Pepsi guy, Donald Kendall, meets this George Cohen and just treats him like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He's like, you fucking McDonald's guy. Guess what? We're in the Soviet Union. Fuck you.
I loved his response to it. He was like, I felt inspired to continue my struggle to establish McDonald's.
Yeah, that
was
fired him up.
Because I was like, this guy is so fucking arrogant. I'm going to show him.
Because the part of coming back to this idea of why did these companies want to do it? Why would they, why would you go to all of this, right? Is that, first of all, you've got 291 million comrades who have never tasted a Pepsi before.
Exactly.
Okay, who've never tasted a Coca-Cola, have never eaten a Big Mac. Now, they don't have that much money.
And they're crazy for Western stuff.
Crazy.
Yeah. They love everything from the West.
And if you got in, that's another part of it. If you got in, then if you do a deal with the Soviet government,
You were in.
you're in, baby.
There was no other competition. 'Cause you were in.
Monopoly was the way.
Exactly. And imagine, if you were in already, if another company wanted to come, they could pretty much probably disrupt the joining process.
They just wouldn't be in. They just wouldn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen. That's the reason Coca-Cola was not in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Well, not at all. It wasn't. It didn't come to Russia
Yeah.
until the end of the Soviet Union fell, because Pepsi had the deal with the Soviets, and so that part of that deal was no Coke in the Soviet Union. And it wasn't until the Soviet Union fell that Pepsi went, what? and there's old Boris Yeltsin going, what? You made deal with Soviet Union. We are free Russia now. So all bets are off.
It's actually an interesting idea. The first McDonald's that opened, what soft drinks did they offer?
I don't know that.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Was it only Pepsi? Or I guess, right? And then probably some Russian beverages as well. Maybe? I don't know.
Good. Look, that is a huge question that I don't know the answer to. Did they serve Coca-Cola at the opening? So it's about I want to say something like 18 months from the opening of the first one to the fall of the Soviet Union.
I read a pretty cool fact. Someone said McDonald's was way more successful than the Germans in invading the Soviet Union during winter. I was like, yeah, that's actually a good point.
So you want these, if you get a deal with the Soviets, you're in.
Yeah.
And that's very important. But Pepsi had already discovered that, the appetite, as you said, Tauri, for these Western goods was so strong
it was huge.
that people were willing to pay.
Yeah. It doesn't matter the fact that it's expensive. It's pretty much it is, a cultural phenomenon, really. It's a symbol of status, basically.
So on one hand, McDonald's must have been worried about this. On the other hand, they must have known the example of Pepsi that people will. So, I mean, that's given them at least, they were worried about it, of course.
Yeah.
But that's given them some cause for, okay, this could be okay.
And it was. I mean, they became the busiest restaurant in the world, right? I think the one in Moscow.
It was, I think it was for a long time.
Yeah,
I don't think it might still be or something.
I don't know. It might be. Because I do think the opening day, it was the largest, the most amount of orders completed ever.
That was 30,000 orders completed.
And they stayed open for way longer than they should have as well, I think. Because people were literally waiting in the... Keep in mind, this is, what was it, January? This is January in Russia.
Yes, January.
This is not warm. People were standing outside, freezing outside for hours to spend their days worth of salary on a Big Mac.
Right. And
value
Gorbachev wanted it because he's like, when you taste that Big Mac, you'll know that my perestroika reforms have done something.
Because it was also like the McDonald's deal was in a way also another like kick in the balls for Pepsi, because Pepsi was trying to opening Pizza Hut, right? At the same time.
Now they didn't get to true.
Yeah.
So information for people from who weren't from the West. So McDonald's is typically known with Coke.
Yeah.
But Coke and McDonald's are separate companies.
Yeah.
But they've just always been together. I don't know the nature of the relationship, but it's always been Coke and McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now, Pepsi, these days, Pepsi owns Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
But they only bought Pizza Hut in like, I want to say the 70s or the 80s or something. But by this stage, however...
For the Soviet vodka money, probably, right?
Yeah, something like that's how they managed. They bought a lot of pizza. So after a while, Pepsi is Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
They are one and the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seemed obvious that Pepsi, using their thing, would want to open a Pizza Hut store. They did do that, I think, in like May 1990. I think it was that they found it as well hugely more difficult to establish a restaurant than to open bottling plants.
But I also think that they had the issue that they literally tried to like source some of the produce locally, and they did have production issues and everything. So.
Right, so they had that, and I think that's what they were. They didn't do a Mick complex. They didn't set up the Pepsi farm. They were more relying on Soviet supply lines,
Big mistake.
And they were hugely fucked when the Soviet Union, even more than McDonald's. McDonald's had some control over their own shit. Right. Pepsi had zero. So Pizza Hut fell apart when the Soviet Union collapsed. So with the currency situation, so we're coming back to this idea of the money that you're using and how does the company get their profits out. So Pepsi first sold in 1972. And so they came to the solution for this with the Stolenicha vodka. Now we're looking at 1990.
Yeah, the money is even more worthless than before.
Right. But we're deep into
Somehow.
perestroika time, so there's some more options. So McDonald's are like, so how are we going to get our money out? We got to get our money. The first thing that McDonald's could have done is just sold for foreign currency.
Yeah.
I guess by that stage, it wasn't illegal anymore.
No, I mean, it was kind of a rough line. Like, if you were a politician, you were pretty much allowed to own, or if you were in the higher ups in the society, you wouldn't, like everyone knew you had hard currency, basically. But yeah, if you were like a common Soviet citizen, you were pretty much not allowed to have any hard currency.
Right. So if you made a restaurant that...
You would have had no, to be fair, like, it could have been, it was banned, but you really had no way of obtaining it anyway. You didn't know the proper channels.
So the one option was to make a restaurant that only accepted foreign currency.
Yes.
Which would have severely limited the number of customers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because you would only have, like, party members or only the higher-ups come to your McDonald's.
So not only does that limit the amounts that you can sell.
Exactly.
And if you run the numbers on that, it's not profitable.
Exactly. Especially if your establishment is based on the fact that you want to service as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible.
Right. Sure. So, yeah, the party members want gourmet burger, not efficient off the conveyor belt burger. The other one is that McDonald's, and this is kind of hard, I think, for people to understand, maybe, that McDonald's has a value that they wanted to be a family restaurant. Yeah. And again, we're now thinking of McDonald's 2 a.m. burger. Yeah. But McDonald's, its roots are in, it's a family restaurant. It's a place you could take the whole family to eat. It was affordable for families to eat at. And it didn't exclude everyone. So it was a big part of their philosophy that we need to make sure everyone has access or a possibility to come there. So that said, okay, we've got to sell for rubles. Yeah. So then, okay, now we're back to what do we do with the rubles?
So now, but I do love so what they did was they invested the money locally at first, right? They would just expand their own operations, I think, that they used the rubles that they generated to like locally expand. Yeah,
so you got some options. We got some money. What are we going to do with it? We could, we can't directly exchange the rubles still, even though like you could exchange smaller amounts, I think, by this time, perestroika kind of time, but not like millions or like the size the company McDonald's wants to pull out of the company. So what are your options? You could buy crude oil.
Oh yeah, that was
the Navy thing. You know, the same thing. You could buy that. You could buy land, possibly, and then rent that to foreign companies. So McDonald's, but then McDonald's have got to be a real estate mogul, essentially. So you could buy. Their idea was to buy land and then rent that land to foreign companies, who then would give them currency. You could buy oil. I guess I don't even know the logistics of that.
Anything,
you got to buy oil.
Yeah, and then sell it on the global market.
Sell it on the global market. And I think, as you say, I think what they initially decided was at first, we're just they just reinvested it.
Yeah.
Just reinvested into growing that franchise in the Soviet Union. And then 18 months later,
the Soviet Union collapsed. So you could already exchange, for hard currency.
Hard currency. So they've got an option.
So the problem pretty much solved itself. They were lucky in that sense.
Yeah, so they're at the very end of the Soviet Union. And
to be fair, there's one really cool marketing thing they did, I think, with the hard currency thing as well. It was like every one of those small elite shops had a sign which was like hard currency only. And Cohen saw that sign and he put it in front of his McDonald's on the Red Square, but he redesigned it and it said, I think it said like rubles only or something. And the people loved it because it was like, it was perfect, right? It's the perfect marketing tool because you won the people on your side and you also got the, you got the currency as well.
Right. So very good marketing campaign, rubles only. So I guess that sign must have been familiar to most people.
It was like only. Exactly, it was done in the exact same style, I think, as the ones that were outside these elite shops.
Sure.
This is like
pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so what we're seeing again, these little that's what I feel like the history is interesting through these little stories, like the way that Donald Kendall gave him Soviet Union Pepsi so Khrushchev could like it, like that little edge on the end which made it the foot in the door. And just that little thing, like he didn't need to do that, to put this plaque that said rubles only. But by this stage, he's been through, again, George Cohen, he's the dude who went through the 17 days of waiting. He's seen every fucking Soviet bureaucrat. This man has seen more bureaucracy probably than your average Soviet citizen.
I think did he make like his own, like to stamp documents, some kind of his own thing that just said like crap or something on it. He would just like to calm himself down after a day of dealing with the Soviet bureaucracy. Would like stamp documents with that shit. He'd be like, I'm fucking done.
So he wanted to give a bit of an FU or just put I'm done with the bureaucracy, to the bureaucracy at least.
To the bureaucracy and like to the higher ups in a way, in some ways. Like we are for the people, basically. And but the next issue was staff, right?
The staffing, right?
Because McDonald's and I guess that's like the American service culture is very like keep on smiling is right.
Sure. I don't know if all you Estonians are aware, but there wasn't a very good service culture in the Soviet Union. Don't know if you've heard about that or not. Don't know if you're still living it today.
Yeah, I actually thought about that as well. That it's like, but to be fair, this is kind of an interesting issue that he just dissected because. The McDonald's employees themselves they didn't get very positive feedback to that service at first, that they were always smiling, and then the people would come up to the counter and be like, what's wrong with me? Like, why are you laughing at me?
Like, the customers?
Yeah, the customers, they weren't used to the fact that people were smiling at them constantly.
Even when, had they heard about it, they're like, okay, look, here's the deal. You're going to line up, Ivan, you're going to get your Big Mac, and they're going to smile at you.
Because would you imagine that? I don't think that was like something that was really like discussed about. You would have only seen it the first time when you entered the McDonald's. I guess people would get used to it eventually.
They wouldn't have known. Okay.
Yeah, but
we're not in this information overload age.
Yeah, there's no real experience with the American service culture. Yeah, you have Pepsi, which is of course like you have American consumer culture, kinda. Well, in some ways, you have an aspect of it, but you don't have anything from the service.
There's
culture.
No service.
There's no service basically. Oh, the service is completely different basically. Right. It's this stone cold. What do you want? Take your shit, get out of here, fuck off. Whereas, the American culture is completely different.
Where did I put my...
Keep on smiling, how you doing, How do you think I'm doing? I work in a factory looking bread.
Yeah, and again, these kind of, these little things that Cohen knew how to do to endear himself to the Soviet Union. So the press rightly says, hey, what are you going to do? Soviet Union not known for the service. And Cohen says, well, okay, who wins the most medals at the Olympic Games?
The Soviets.
The Soviets. Okay, well, they had to train hard and work hard and do hard. Do you think I'll be able to teach some Soviet kids how to?
Yeah, I think he was like, if they can beat us consistently at sports, they're able to learn how to like perform service in 30 hours or something. And the Soviets love that as well.
Yeah, okay, of course you can. Yeah.
Of course we can.
Yeah. Cohen, all right, we'll have one of your burgers. So yeah, they've got to train them up, and it was something like, God, now my notes are all over the place, but it was, okay, so what have we got? Cohen and Stevens received an overwhelming 30,000 applications.
Yeah.
6,000 were interviewed.
And 600 were
eventually hired.
But it was expanded to 1,200 afterwards.
So they got about 1,200. They've got here employee training was a 30-hour course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had to do at least a 30-hour course on proper customer service techniques and and this is why I put this line in, and the importance of working as a team.
Yeah. And apparently it worked really well.
It seemed to have worked, and things like these things must have been revolutionary.
Oh yeah.
If you didn't work full time, you worked about 12 to 15 hours a week. And the workers were told that school and family must come first, and work was only a secondary priority in life.
Yeah.
The company was always willing to accommodate workers' schedules and be flexible in their personal matters. I mean, that must have just been like a bomb. Like, what the fuck? What's the trick?
Plus the fact that like how the Soviet, I think the newspapers viewed it as like good for young people to work there because they are, learning to, like the rebellious Soviet youth through working in McDonald's is becoming like an efficient workforce, which I find kind of ironic that you would think that the rebelling youth would be fixed while working for an American corporation.
Yeah, but that's how they saw it.
Yeah, that's
right?
how they saw it.
They saw it. Like those kids, they literally, okay, now they're going to be good, upstanding will be good, upstanding citizens, workers of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Once they've been through American capitalistic service training.
Yeah.
I love it. So yeah, so they served 50,000 people a day. Jesus, I wonder how long that line was. I mean, that's again like that. Seeing those iconic pictures of the first McDonald's, of the golden arches having the hammer and sickle underneath it, that's a legit photo. Google that shit if you're watching.
You should actually search it on YouTube. There is a video or a video footage of the first day when McDonald's opened in Red Square, and it's pretty cool because they do ask the customers for feedback as well. And there's this Russian guy. He's like, I do not like.
Wow. Okay, you'll learn.
It's pretty cool because he just says, I don't like it, but they translate it to, it's not Russian. I don't like it.
Okay. Here's another one. Another one of these little tidbits. There was also Employee of the Month program started to keep workers motivated. That's all they needed. They had so little. They're like, now be like, Employee of the Month. What the hell is that? That's stupid. That's so.
You get extra pay though.
Yeah. But that was
it was revolutionary for them.
Things. Yeah.
Stuff we nowadays consider to be kind of like elementary stuff.
Right.
Nowadays.
Like Employee of the Month. Ooh, that's the thing that had done it. Yeah, so they managed to train these kids. They managed to, and I don't know how many McDonald's restaurants they opened before the fall of the Soviet Union.
No, neither do I.
Whether they got any more than just the one. We're just sort of focusing in this episode on that first big thing of how they got it in.
Yeah.
But I think they would have. Yeah, I know the prices went up not long after. They did have a price increase after a while. I mean, I guess they were just pushing it so low. To begin with,
of course,
that they had to go up from 5 rubles to whatever it was.
I mean, the demand was like so high anyway, so it probably didn't even affect it that much. Because, like you say, like how many orders did they do? It's crazy.
Yeah, there must be some balance there as well because their whole thing was like it's got to be available for families.
Yeah,
dude, this is the same argument. I've had this same argument with the managers of international comedians.
Oh yeah.
because they'll come to me and they'll say, okay, we want to bring the so-and-so big international Netflix worldwide star to Estonia. And I'm like, okay, I think the ticket should be X amount.
Yeah, and they just want to double it.
They're like, no, it should be more. They're like, no, but the artist has that potential.
Yeah.
You know, they sold so fast last time that we're going to put the price up. I'm like, yeah, like you can, but what is that then doing to the people? Like, what is that? Yeah, okay, like you sold 2 shows and they sold in, okay, a week's time or something. So then the theory then goes, could we put double the price and just have 1 show? You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
And I so many times I'm like, yeah, you can, but should you? Like, should we really do this? Do we really feel right to charge 80 euros a ticket for, I mean, some people will pay, but there's a lot of people that won't be able to pay.
You have also probably the people who went last time are going to look at the price increase and be like, I liked it last time, but I'm not going to recommend it to anyone.
Should this, yes, I agree, your artist could, I mean, they can earn more money. Is that a good thing for them? Would it reflect badly on them? So my point is that this must have also been going through the mind of McDonald's in the Soviet Union as well. Like, okay, we are here to make money, but we're here to make sure that everyone can. Look, I don't know. Maybe the average salaries are going up.
Yeah.
How did it go? Give me some insight, Tauri, about how it would have went in the next 6 months after the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, did people still have jobs and shit? Like.
Yeah, it was like it was a really crazy time, especially in Russia. Well, everywhere really, because it was like, it was the complete collapse of like one system and replacing it with another. So new currencies. It was like a Wild West, basically. Wild West capitalism is pretty much what you should imagine it as.
So
people had jobs, but it was like also an economically volatile time period.
I mean, if something was controlled by the government, say some farming thing, so what did they just?
These were normally privatized. The collective farms, like at least in Estonia, they were privatized.
Okay.
And just split up.
Split up and privatized, so the farm or some number of farms would be owned now by one person or whatever.
And then there was the whole deal with, like, especially in Estonia, it was like, okay, but these lands were nationalized from some family, before World War II.
Oh, before World War II.
Well,
so
during World War II, or after. And now we're going to have to compensate these people or give them their lands back. So it was like, especially like a really difficult situation to
and
be
that's
in.
only current day. There wasn't really talk of that. Was there talk of that back then in 1991?
In 1991, I mean, in Estonia, it was like the new government came to power, and then they immediately started to like try to implement these reforms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those were done in the 90s, all of them. So, and Russia was especially in like a really difficult situation. I mean, they were led by Yeltsin, who was not the most able leader, shall we say, by that point.
Charismatic, but not able.
His health was just failing. He was a complete alcoholic. And I mean, the privatization in Russia was really messy. It basically became an oligarchy, like a bunch of rich people got most of the resources available in the country, which is what it is nowadays.
Yeah.
It's kind of a feudal state, really.
So how would have, in the immediate aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union, so let's say 6 months to 12 months after that,
you would have probably seen a lot of price increases.
Right. So price increases, because we have seen wages go up, or?
You would have runaway inflation probably. During that time period anyway. The ruble was probably not worth that much.
Okay, it's not worth much, but it's being floated now. It's being exchanged on the international market, and it's not worth much.
Like, there's now goods available in shops, but the goods in general are too expensive for people. Like, everything is available.
Well, they're always too expensive anyway. I mean
yeah.
Getting access to one of these exclusive stores in Moscow was, did you have currency? Yeah, but could you fucking afford it? You would have been that sort of high up party member who had either had foreign currency, could access the international rubles, and had enough of them to begin with.
Like, during Soviet times, normally if you had enough of the currency and the good was there, you could usually buy it. Like, it wasn't that much of an issue. The problem was that the thing was not there. There were 10-year lists for people to buy cars. Right? You would wait for 10 years to be given the opportunity to buy something. So once the Soviet Union collapsed, and we're talking about Russia, then that changed. Now we live in a capitalist society. But it's still like the wages are relatively low, especially, I mean, compared to Western countries, definitely way lower, because the economy has just completely collapsed. Has to be restructured, rebuilt.
But could, for a while, the Soviet Union, well, I was going to say rely on its own internal logistics and supply lines, but they were stuffed or they were screwed anyway.
But you must also understand that it was built as a unitary country. Now that all the republics have split away off from there, now you're only managing Russia. You have to pretty much reorganize your production lines.
Okay, to not include that. Right, that story about the way that, one of the reasons Pizza Hut went down is because their cheese was coming from friggin' Mongolia or something. And from these are now separate countries.
Exactly. So now you have to negotiate new deals. What's the story here? Plus, if you're like sourcing it from some local collective farm, that collective farm is just gone now. It's been privatized to some guy. We don't even know if it is a farm anymore. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
it's so difficult. You have to like do new contracts with everyone. Then I guess.
I wonder. It would be interesting to know how much McDonald's themselves got in on this act.
Oh, that's actually an interesting idea.
That they would have been like, okay, we see what's happening here. We need to get in. Turns out they got a shit ton of rubles.
And turns out McDonald's is the only effective farm left in Russia.
Yeah,
kind of.
That they know how to run. They know how to run shit. They've already created a vertically integrated process. So they have some experience.
Plus, it's state-of-the-art production systems.
State-of-the-art. They know how to go end-to-end already. Some level. They've done this at some level.
Yeah.
They've got the rubles. You'd have to think that's what they went to work with. Like,
could be, yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know, like, what acquisitions they made in that sense.
Sure. And where Pepsi hadn't done that vertical integration, so they did not have the experience to be able to pull that together.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to create something vertically
But
integrated.
of course, the problem was, like, as the 90s progressed as well, was that when the oligarchs were, gaining in power, they were becoming more and more wealthy, they could also probably block McDonald's expansion because they were, like, still an outside company in a way.
Sure.
So
or they want to kickbacks, or they want to, okay, I mean, who knows? Now we don't know. How much did McDonald's get into bed with the oligarchs?
Oh, probably. That's the only
way.
I think it's the only way to do business in Russia, really. Maybe not back then, but nowadays, oh my God.
Yeah, sure. What was I going to say? So yeah, in those final days, and then so McDonald's negotiated very well, and one final fact as we are drawing to the end of this podcast here, and sort of drawing our conclusions of this, because I just wanted us to tell today the story of the opening, getting from zero to that one store, that Pepsi had been in the Soviet Union since 1972, and I told you that Coke didn't get in until the fall of the Soviet Union, but it only took about, I want to say, like 5 years, or like let's say 10 years max. Well, 10 years is a long time. Maybe it was 8 years. Yeah, it sounds like a long time. It wasn't that long. It was like 5 to 8 years, and Coke had overtaken Pepsi.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's so interesting. Like, why?
Why? Because probably people were more used, like, this was a novel item. Right? So, and plus Coca-Cola was probably still famous. You would still have Western films, Western movies.
Yeah, I had heard that. That's an interesting balance.
So that's like a cultural phenomenon as well. And now that it is being sold, people have never had this before. Pepsi, meanwhile, is something they already have known for decades.
Yeah.
So it's not as interesting anymore. This is like a novel product.
It's a novel thing. And I mean, Coke's a marketing machine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they get their claws in, and you could say that we don't know the connections between McDonald's and Coca-Cola. It's not a conspiracy, but they're two big companies that know each other very well.
Yeah.
So no doubt McDonald's were able to help Coca-Cola get into that market in some way, because McDonald's want to open up all those restaurants. They don't want to serve fucking Soviet Union Pepsi or whatever. So we got to find this out. I think that's the key takeaway from this episode.
Yeah.
What drinks could have you bought at the McDonald's in January 1990 in Pushkin Square?
I'm going to have to check the video footage. Go into like deep analysis there.
So, yeah, man, I wanted to do this episode. So I've got this video written about at the same time Sega getting into the Soviet Union. And because for me, it was like, why would you do it? Why? But I think we look back and we do think, yeah, that was a dumpster fire of an economy.
It was a dumpster fire of an economy, but once you got your foot in the door, it was a monopoly you had.
Sure. And we look back and we go like, why would you do it then? But they didn't know the Soviet Union was going to fall in January. I mean, sure, things aren't looking good, and we're not saying this is great, but you didn't know that was only 18 months away.
No.
So it seems like, it's Wild West, like you said, huge risks.
Yeah.
But if you get in, you've got the monopoly, and you've got almost 300 million comrades who have never sampled your product before.
I like to think of it as like a fortress. It's difficult to get inside, but once you're in, you're safe in a way, right? You're living in the lap of luxury, basically. You've got no competition, no worries really, and you're working with the government as well. That's a sweet fucking deal.
Yeah, the huge, and I was a bit sort of even like, why did Sega, like, because the console wouldn't have been that much less expensive than the West. So it's not like a Big Mac. Like, okay, I get a Big Mac, it costs me a day's wage, but I can I can spend a day's wage on something.
Yeah.
Where if a Sega console was like a month's wage.
Yeah.
We're not looking at high production runs. And we think with this console, there could be as little as 2,000 of them made, maybe maximum 10,000.
Oh, okay. So really limited run.
It seems weird. Why did they want to do it? Also, when I look at the internals of this Soviet Union Sega Master System, it had been retooled internally to work with the Soviet TV standard. And so it's a fair amount of work that they would have had to. It wasn't just like they got a regular.
It wasn't a small investment.
It was a significant investment for them to remake a new design of the Master System that worked in the Soviet Union. So this kind of, I started looking, going, why?
So where did they produce these?
I don't know where they were made.
Okay.
No, I think it says made in Japan on the back.
Okay.
So I don't think.
Well, they would never have needed to set up a production line somewhere.
No,
in
they would
Russia.
have
They
been
could
fully
just
imported.
Import them, yeah.
They would have just been imported. So this is where I started. So I've got, the reason we're doing this podcast is I got interested in the Sega story, got me interested in Pepsi and then Coke. And now I've even got another video I'm going to make afterwards is the story of how KFC got into Japan.
Oh, yeah?
It's a shorter story. It's not as intriguing, but one guy. It's always about one guy.
Yeah.
One guy, did the hard work of bringing comedy into Estonia. I mean, from bringing great Western products.
So that was your real inspiration there. It's an ego trip.
So one Japanese guy, he brought the KFC to Japan, and they weren't really into it.
Yeah.
They were like, what is this? We don't know what this American thing is. They don't know much. It's like the 70s or the 80s. They don't know that much about American culture. Yeah, right. And so he goes like, well, America, Christmas, turkey, and he starts telling, he's like, you know that Americans have the turkey for Christmas, right? But the chicken is the turkey, and you should eat this at Christmas. And he convinced Japanese people that you eat chicken, turkey at Christmas. And so now Japanese people like nuts everyone in Japan eats fried chicken at Christmas. So not just KFC, but KFC started it.
So he created the new cultural phenomenon, essentially.
Yeah. One of those things, like it's those little choices, those little points of genius, a flash in a moment. He goes, oh, we'll connect it to Christmas, to turkey, to chicken, fried chicken. And yeah, I love these stories. So I'm going to hopefully have more of these podcasts for you guys, just telling these sort of obscure stories.
All right.
Tauri, thanks for coming in and talking with me about this, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It was good fun.
All right,
I loved it.
Thank you very much, everyone.